Let me start with a number that's going to get some folks upset. The average little barn, if you go out and buy one of them kits or hire a crew to put it up, is going to run you somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 for a barn. And a whole lot of folks look at that price tag, they figure a barn just ain't in the cards for them, and they give up on the whole idea. Well, I'm here today to tell you that is a load of hogwash, because a few years back, I built myself a real, solid, honest barn on this Texas place, one that stands up to our wind and our sun and keeps my animals and my equipment dry, and I did the whole thing for under $3,000. Now, I ain't telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I want you to see exactly how I did it, right down to where every single dollar went. Because here's the thing. The secret to building cheap ain't really in the building at all. It's in knowing where the money hides, where to find materials for pennies on the dollar, and, just as important, knowing the few places where you must not cut a corner or the whole thing will come down on you. So today we're going to walk through all of it. Why barns cost so dang much in the first place, the cheapest kind of barn you can build, where to get your materials cheap or flat out free, and the handful of things you should never, ever skimp on. Grab your coffee, this is a good one. So first, let's talk about why barns cost so much. Because once you understand that, you understand exactly how to get around it. When you buy a barn kit or you hire it out, you ain't just paying for lumber and metal. You're paying for a whole stack of markups. You're paying the company's profit. You're paying for their labor crew. You're paying for brand new top dollar materials trucked in from who knows where. You're paying for the fancy engineered trusses, the pretty trim, the paint job, all of it. Add it all up and the actual raw materials, the stuff that's really holding that barn up, might only be a fraction of what you handed over. The rest is all markup and labor and shine. And on top of that, folks way overbuild for what they actually need. They put up some big fancy barn with a loft and stalls and a tack room and cupolas on a roof, when what they really needed was a simple dry space to park a tractor and keep some hay and a few animals out of the weather. Every one of them extras costs real money. So the very first thing you got to do before you buy a single board is get honest about what you actually need this barn to do. You strip it down to the real job. You supply your own labor, and you find your own materials. And just like that, you've knocked 80–90% off that scary price tag. That's the whole game. All right, so if we're building cheap, the next question is, what kind of barn? And for my money, there is one clear winner, and that's the pole barn, also called post frame construction. If you want the most barn for the least money, this is how you do it. And it's how folks have been putting up sheds and barns out here for 100 years. So let me tell you why it's so cheap and so strong. A regular building sits on a big, continuous concrete foundation, and pouring that foundation is one of the most expensive parts of the whole job. A pole barn skips all that. Instead, the whole structure stands on a handful of stout posts set right down into the ground. Them posts carry all the weight and handle all the wind. That one difference, no big concrete foundation, saves you thousands right off the bat. You dig your holes, you set your posts, and your foundation's done for a couple $100 instead of a couple thousand. And it don't stop there. A pole barn uses way less material overall. The posts are spaced out wide, usually 8 or 10 or even 12 feet apart, so you're not filling every wall with lumber like a house. It's a simple, open, strong skeleton. It goes up fast. 1 or 2 folks can build it without a big crew, and you can leave the walls open or close them in cheap with metal or rough-cut lumber, whatever your budget allows. Simple, strong, cheap, and proven. That's a pole barn, and that's what we're working with. And before you go any further, This is where you settle on your size, because size drives your whole budget more than just about anything. Here's the honest advice I give everybody. Figure out the space you really need, and then, if you can swing it at all, build it just a touch bigger. Now that sounds like it goes against saving money, I know, but I have never once in my life met a fella who said his barn was too big. Not one. But I've met a whole passel of them who ran out of room the first year and had to go build a second one. And building twice always costs more than building once. That said, don't get carried away and put up some cathedral. Every extra foot is more posts, more metal, more money. Right size it, honest. Big enough you won't cuss yourself in 2 years. Small enough you're not paying for space you'll never fill. For most folks starting out, something like a 24 by 30 runs you a real useful barn without breaking the bank. Now we get to the fun part, and this is where you really save your money. Finding your materials cheap or free. Because remember, if you buy everything brand new at full retail from the big box store, your costs shoot right up. The trick is to become a bit of a treasure hunter. And I promise you, the deals are out there if you're willing to look. Start with reclaimed and used lumber. Old barns and old sheds get torn down all the time, and folks will often let you haul off that old lumber for cheap or for nothing just to be rid of it. That weathered wood is usually old growth, tougher than anything you'll buy new today. Check for demolition jobs, old fences coming down, pallets. Good heavy pallets are free by the truckload behind most any warehouse or feed store, and that's a whole lot of usable wood if you take the time to break them down. Then there's used metal roofing and siding. Somebody's always re-roofing a barn or a shop, and that old metal, long as it ain't rusted through, is perfectly good for your walls and roof at a fraction of new. And get to know your local sawmill. If there's a small sawmill anywhere near you, you can buy rough-cut lumber straight from them for way less than the finished, plain stuff at the store. And honestly, it's stronger for barn framing anyhow. Watch the auctions, the estate sales, the farm sales, the classifieds online. Folks are always selling off leftover building materials from their own projects for cheap. And don't underestimate just asking around. Tell every neighbor and every fella at the feed store what you're up to. Word gets around, and next thing you know, somebody's got a stack of tin or a pile of posts they'll give you just to clear out their barnyard. Now, and this is just as important as finding the cheap stuff, let's talk about where you must not cut a corner. Because there's a big difference between building cheap and building junk, and the line between the two comes down to just a handful of spots. Skimp here, and you don't save money, you throw it away, because you'll be rebuilding, or worse, inside a few years. So burn these into your brain. Number 1, and this is the big one, your posts and how deep you set them. Them posts are the whole barn. They hold up the roof and they fight the wind, and if they fail, everything fails. So do not use cheap, untreated lumber in the ground. You want proper ground contact, pressure-treated post, the kind rated to sit in the dirt, or good solid locust or cedar if you got it. Anything else rots off at the ground line in a few years and your barn starts leaning. And you set them deep, at least 3 to 4 feet down, below your frost line, and you tamp them in good, ideally with some concrete or gravel around the base. That's the one place I'll tell you to go ahead and buy new every time. Your posts are not where you save a nickel. Number 2, the roof. A barn's whole job is to keep things dry, and the second your roof leaks, everything underneath it starts to rot and rust. Now, used metal roofing is just fine to save money, but only if it's still solid, not rusted through, and you check every panel. And you spend the money on good screws for it and proper roofing screws with the rubber washers, not cheap nails. A roof done right sheds water for 30 years, A roof done cheap leaks by next spring. Number 3, your fasteners and hardware. This one folks always try to save on, and it's a huge mistake. The nails, the screws, the bolts, the brackets, that's what actually holds your whole structure together against the wind. Buying cheap, weak, or the wrong coated fasteners is like building a strong wall with weak glue. Use the proper galvanized or coated hardware rated for outdoor use, the right size, and plenty of them. It's a small part of your total budget, and it is absolutely not the place to pinch. So there's your rule of thumb, plain and simple. Save your money on the stuff that just fills space, your walls, your siding, your interior boards. But spend it where it counts, on the bones, your posts, your roof, and your hardware. Get that balance right and you end up with a barn that costs you almost nothing but stands strong for 30 years. All right, now that you know what to build it out of and where to spend and where to save, let me walk you through how it actually goes up, step by step. I'm going to keep this simple because a pole barn really is simple, and don't let anybody scare you off it. If you can dig a hole and turn a screw, you can build one of these. Step 1 is layout. You pick your spot, someplace that drains well, sits a little high so water runs away from it, not toward it, and you can get a truck to. Then you mark out your corners with stakes and string, and here's the one bit of care you got to take. You measure your diagonals corner to corner, and you make sure they're equal. That's how you know your rectangle is square. Get that right, and everything else falls into place. Get it wrong, and you'll fight it the whole build. Step 2 is setting your post, and this is the heart of the whole thing. You dig your holes down below the frost line, 3-4 feet deep, spaced out along your string lines, usually 8 feet apart. You stand your treated post in them holes, you get them plumb, straight up and down, and you brace them there temporary with some scrap lumber. Then you set them permanent, either tamping in gravel real good or pouring a little concrete around the base. Take your time here and get every post plumb and in line, because these posts are your whole barn. This is the step you do not rush. Step 3. Once your posts are set and solid, you tie them all together up top. You run a good stout beam along the tops of the post on each side. That's your top plate, and it ties the whole row of posts together and carries your roof. You bolt and nail them beams to your posts good and proper. Now you got a solid connected frame standing there instead of a row of lonesome poles. You'll also run some girts, horizontal boards, across the posts on the walls, and them give you something to screw your siding to later. Step 4 is your roof, and that's just your rafters or trusses up top. You set them up across them top beams, spaced out even, and this gives your roof its shape and its slope. You want a decent slope on it so rain and snow shed right off. Get them rafters up and braced, tie in a few purlins across them. Them are the boards your roof metal screws down to, and your skeleton is done. Honestly, the day you get your roof frame up is the day it really starts looking like a barn, and it's a good feeling. Step 5, you close her in. You screw your metal roofing down over them purlins, working bottom to top so each panel overlaps the one below and sheds water right. And don't forget a ridge cap along the peak. Then you hang your siding on the walls, metal or rough-cut boards or whatever you scrounged up, screwing it to them girts. Leave your openings for your doors and a window or two for light and air. And speaking of, get you some airflow up high, a gap under the eaves or a vent, so that barn breathes and don't trap all that damp and animal moisture inside. Now a word on the floor, 'cause folks always ask. You do not need to go pouring a big expensive concrete slab in there, and that's a real budget saver. For most barns, a good compacted gravel floor works just fine. It drains great, it's easy on your animal's legs, and it costs a tiny fraction of concrete. You lay down some crushed rock, tamp it down solid, and you're done. If you want a hard floor in just one spot, like a little workshop corner, you can pour a small pad there later and leave the rest gravel. That's how you keep the floor from eating your whole budget. And step 6 is your doors and the finishing touches. A big sliding door on a track is the classic cheap barn door, and it works a treat. You frame your opening, build a door out of the same siding you used on the walls, hang it on a track, and you're in business. After that, it's just whatever you need inside. Maybe a few stalls, some shelves, a workbench. But the barn itself, the part that keeps the weather out, that's done. That's the whole build, start to finish. Now let's get to the part you really came for, the honest money breakdown. Where did every dollar go to bring this in under $3,000? Now your exact numbers are going to depend on what you can scrounge and what things cost in your neck of the woods. But let me give you the real shape of it so you know where your budget goes. Your single biggest line item is going to be your posts and your framing lumber. Your posts, your top beams, your girts, your rafters. Even buying the important stuff new, figure that's roughly a third of your budget. Call it somewhere around $800–900. That's the bones, and like I said, that's where you spend. Next up is your roofing and siding metal. If you buy it all new, this would be your most expensive part by far, easy over $1,000. But this is exactly where scrounging used metal pays off huge. Getting it secondhand can cut that in half or better, so let's call it somewhere around $600 to $800 if you hunt good deals. Then you got your concrete and your fasteners, the bags of concrete for setting posts and all them screws and bolts and brackets. Figure a couple $300 there. And remember, this is not the place to pinch. Then there's the odds and ends that always sneak up on you. Your door track hardware, hinges, a little paint or sealer, a window, whatever. Call that another $200–300. You add all that up, call it $900 for framing, $700 for metal, $300 for concrete and fasteners, and a few hundred for the rest, and you land right around $2,500 for a real, solid, weather-tight barn. Scrounge more of your materials, and you'll come in even lower. That's how you do it under $3,000. Now let me warn you about the money mistakes that blow that budget, because I've made some of them myself so you don't have to. The first and biggest is buying everything brand new at full retail. If you walk into the big box store and load a cart with all new lumber and new metal, you'll double your cost right there, easy. The whole magic is in the hunt, the used, the reclaimed, the leftover. You skip that, you lose the savings. The second big one is getting the size wrong, and I mean both directions. Build it too big for what you need, and you're paying for material you didn't have to. But build it too small, and like I said, you're paying twice when you have to add on. Plan it once, honest and right. The third mistake is forgetting the little stuff in your budget. Folks budget for the big lumber and the metal and then plumb forget the concrete, the screws, the door hardware, the sealer, and all them little things add up to real money and blow your number if you didn't plan for them. Make a full list before you start. And the fourth is not having a plan at all. Just buying as you go and winding up with the wrong amount of everything, wasted material, and extra trips to town. Draw it out on paper first, figure your materials list, then go hunting. A plan is free, and it saves you a fortune. So let's step back and look at what you actually pulled off here, because the math is the best part. That same barn, if you'd bought it as a kit or hired it built, would have run you $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 like we said at the top. You built it yourself for right around $2,500. So you didn't just save a little, you saved somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000. That is real money. Money that stays in your pocket for livestock, for feed, for seed, for whatever your place actually needs. And it ain't just the money you saved. Now you know how your barn's built, every post and every screw, so you can fix it and add on to it yourself forever. You built it exactly the way you needed it instead of taking whatever some company offered. And you got that feeling, the one you can't put a price on, of standing back and looking at a solid barn that you raised with your own 2 hands. That's worth something all by itself. There's one more piece of that math folks forget too. A good barn adds real value to your property. You spend $2,500 in materials on a solid, useful barn, and you've very likely added a whole lot more than that to what your place is worth if you ever sell. So it ain't really money spent at all. It's money moved out of your pocket and into your land, where it keeps working for you. Try finding an investment like that anywhere else. You feed and shelter your animals, you protect your equipment from the weather so it lasts longer, and you build the value of the whole place, all off one weekend project barn that cost you less than a used truck. So if I was telling a fella where to start, here's what I'd say. Don't rush out and buy a thing yet. Start with a plan on paper, your size, your simple pole barn design, your full materials list. Then spend a few weeks being a treasure hunter, rounding up your used metal and your reclaimed lumber cheap. Buy your posts and your roof and your hardware new, 'cause that's your bones. And then pick a stretch of good weather. Get a buddy or two to help with the posts and the roof, and put her up one step at a time. It ain't a race. Do it that way, and I promise you'll end up with a barn you're proud of, for a fraction of what everybody told you it cost. Don't let them big price tags scare you off. You can absolutely do this. If this was helpful, do me a favor and smack that like button. It really does help this little channel grow. And if you ain't subscribed, come on and join us. I put out honest, down-to-earth homestead and DIY advice every week, straight from the farm. And tell me down in the comments, what are you fixing to build first? I read every one of them. Now get on out there and build something. Take care, y'all.